822 back with a live shot. Century Plaza Hotel and Spa. And even though we're on Baby Watch, I said to my wife, I got to come in today because Curtis Joseph, the legend, that is Cujo, is here. The brand new book, it is out, not just about hockey, the untold story of my life on and off the ice. Congrats on it. And you know you're a big deal when you have Wayne Gretzky writing the foreword, speaking and just going off and praising you. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I tell my friends it was worth writing the book to have Wayne saying something nice about you, and they all laugh. So yeah, it was nice of him to do it.
Well, I mean, he's an influence. He was your coach when they were the Phoenix Coyotes, but he was also an influence for your family life because we mentioned you now have 7 kids you take care of, and his advice was pertinent to your family.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. I'd go to his fantasy camp. Me and Stephanie go to his fantasy camp every year in Vegas. And I remember as a whirlwind, he's signing, he's doing all these things, and I had a morning coffee, and he looked up at me and said, "You and Steph should have a child together." And I started sweating immediately, and I was, I went upstairs and go, "Hey, what Wayne said to me?" So it was pretty funny moment.
It's the great
and it happened.
And it happened. And Steph, your wife, is featured in this book. And one of the sentiments she shared, because your upbringing, which you're very honest about, you had 2 moms, 3 dads, you grew up in a home of, mentally ill patients. She said, your story, you needed to be needed all these years.
Right, and she would tell me that about myself, and also she would bring everything out of me and say, "Listen, you need to write a book." And of course, I was shy about my childhood, a little embarrassed, and eventually, Stephanie sat down with Kirsty Day and said, "This is your author." And thank goodness we picked Kirsty Day. She was amazing, and she was able to get out of me what we needed to in the book, and it just turned out fantastic.
And I mean, you outlined the challenges when you were a kid. I mean, you talk about your mom, Jan, but the conditions you grew up with, the lack of nutrition. You were the true underdog in this, and that could have broken a lot of people. But instead, you broke through with a glass half full mentality. Where does that come from?
Not sure, but I always had that mentality, don't be a victim, be victorious. And, it was just my childhood. I didn't know any different. As I got a little older, I used to hang out with friends, families, and think that was amazing. And really the community rallied and took me all different places. But I was always looking for something better, always searching. And obviously hockey became my family. And I loved hanging out with these guys. So it became my passion, my life, and always wanting something better.
How uncomfortable was it to write this?
There were some moments where I would pause and choose my words carefully, and but Kirsty was great. She kept getting things out of it and out of me, and it turned out fantastic. It was tough, but it was great in that respect also.
What do your kids said about it?
They're so supportive, and they've heard me over the last probably 7 or 8 years talk about my childhood more openly, and I use it as a teaching tool. It's not walking to school 5 miles in the snow uphill both ways, but it's something that I can use as a teaching tool and give them motivation.
And when you look at the motivation you can provide, because 19 seasons in the NHL, Canadian Olympic gold medalist, I mean, you're celebrated in the game of hockey. The idea that you get to share the experience with them, and we have a photo from this book, your kids with some NHL greats. What is that experience like for you now as a father to watch them grow up and see their gift on the ice?
I always loved bringing my kids to the rink and meeting all the superstars of the game. And I remember Pat Quinn actually giving a fiery speech, and there was a few tainted words in there. And I was in my stall between periods, and I looked through the door, and I could see my kids eating a bagel, listening to every word. And I was like, wow, that's an experience for my kids. So here they are with Sean Hill and Shane Doan skating at Christmas last year, and they loved it. I mean, these 2 guys are stars and amazing human beings. So for my kids to be around people like that, it's great as a dad.
Yeah, and you're an ambassador with the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're having a great year.
Yes.
Interesting thing on this side with our Vancouver Canucks, the competitiveness with Pettersson, with Besser. What do you see about what's happening on the West Coast with what you like and a potential generational player in Pettersson?
What a lottery windfall to get Pettersson. You never know what you're going to get when you draft, but if you're in the top 5 picks, you could get anything. And it looks like Vancouver has hit the lottery. This kid is amazing. Ray Ferraro talks about him. I saw a few quotes from Ray, and he's got great hockey knowledge. He watches the game, and when he's saying great things, I listen. So, the expectations were low coming in, I think, for the team, but Vancouver Canuck fans got to be excited.
They're competing hard. Well, listen, your message front and center tonight, 7 p.m. Indigo. You can do the meet and greet, get more advice. And you saw us talking about this earlier, Cujo. Dad advice. 7 kids you take care of. Best dad advice that you've got.
Well, through experience, you know, you always want to bail your kids out of every situation, but I've learned that you got to let them make their own mistakes and let them learn for themselves. And that's a tough thing to do as a parent. You always want to save them, but you're not doing them any favors. It builds character when they make a mistake and they feel the pain. They won't do it again. So that's some of my advice. I remember my oldest boy, Taylor, said, you know, I said, what were you thinking? I was getting in trouble about something. I'm like, how could you do that? He goes, got to make our own mistakes, right, Dad? Using my own words against me.
Got to let them fail. You
got to let them fail.
I like it. Papa Cujo.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to remember that.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Excellent book, excellent read. Pick it up if you can. Going to take a break.